I'm one of them kids that really struggled at school, and creativity was my savior. I predominantly work with natural materials. I have this obsession with finding something that is unique but not forced.
How do you make money from it?
Big question. I'm gonna see how I can distill that down.
Welcome to the Mood Podcast, uncovering the art of conversation through the lens of photography and creativity, one frame at a time. I'm your host, Matt Jacob. Thank you so much for joining me in this week's episode. My guest for this conversation is Jake Paul White, a British artist whose quiet, ethereal paintings are created using natural dyes and earth pigments like indigo, clay, and betel nut. His work blurs the line between abstraction and emotion, inviting us as viewers to slow down, feel deeply, and reconnect with something often forgotten. In my chat with him, we explore what Jake calls his search for lost color, the philosophy behind using natural pigments, and why stillness plays such a central role in both his work and his life. We also talk about the romance and struggle of the creative process, the emotional terrain of making art that doesn't need to explain itself, and how he sustains a living as a full-time painter without compromising the quiet integrity of his work. So now, please slow down, listen, because here is Jake Paul White. Jake Paul White, welcome to the Mood Podcast.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. We have mutual connections, but first time we met and sat down across from each other and talking about, well, what are we going to talk about? Let's just start with your background, I guess. Give us an idea of who you are and what you do, but more importantly, why you do it.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Well, I'm a painter. I always have been a painter. I've always been a creative, and I'm one of them kids that really struggled at school, and creativity was my savior. You know, it's something that I always came back to. It was the one class that I was actually good at. So at the time, I always felt like it was my only choice. And I was always very lucky to have this one thing that kind of anchored me at school, because I just struggled with all the other classes. So I went from school, I went to college, I went to university, and paint was very much my kind of guiding light with everything that I did. And, from university, I found it just so difficult to imagine myself being an artist. I was...
What did you study at uni?
Paint.
Oh, okay.
Studied paint. I went to Brighton University. I went to Art University. Absolutely loved it. As soon as I got to college, it was just like such a weight off my shoulders. School was just so challenging. I just couldn't, that system just didn't work for me whatsoever. And as soon as I got to college, I felt so free. I got to experiment. I got to play. I had the most amazing teacher. I think still to this day, the teacher that created that biggest shift, for me. And then got to university, and it was always painting, fine art, creativity, but I never had the confidence to. I don't know how young people go into the art world. It's so revealing, So when I left university, I moved into design, and design kind of gave me that support of being a creative, but having a sense of guidance, a sense of business acumen. So you're creating something with an end result. But with paint, you don't really naturally have an end result, and you're creating it for yourself. So I went on a long journey of design, and then eventually came to, on my travels, came to find yoga. And that was a big turning point for me. So everything else kind of faded away, and fully immersed myself in the world of yoga, and kind of became my life. At the same time of traveling the world and seeing new things, I became a teacher. I did a teacher training, became a full-time teacher, and I got to travel the world with that as well, and moved into doing teacher trainings and so forth. And I remember my first yoga class, my voice froze. I was such a shy, lacked confidence, and I never thought I would teach, really. I did the teacher training because it kind of came my way as an opportunity, and I just kind of grabbed it. And yeah, I remember my voice froze and it was very embarrassing. But I think that moment was a moment I was like, oh, this is something that I want to learn. Maybe not even to teach yoga, but just to learn how to find that confidence and project my voice and to teach. And, years after years, I started doing small classes, larger classes. Then I did small festivals. Then I did large festivals, teacher trainings, workshops, retreats, traveled the world with that. So even though I don't practice yoga as a kind of a complete practice these days, I think that was the biggest takeaway for me. It really allowed me to evolve as a teacher, as a human, to have the confidence to share, which I'm always very grateful of. And then eventually I was through them travels, I was coming to Bali, where I am now. And the design business was running in the background actually at the same time. And so I was producing work predominantly for the yoga industry, logos, websites, branding, all this kind of thing. So the two worlds very much collided and they helped each other. So I might get yoga work through my design, I might get design work through yoga. And there's kind of this continuous back and forth. And I kind of rode that wave for 10 years. And I still have a design agency now. But a couple of years ago, painting came back into my life. For a few avenues. One, I had an opportunity to do ceramics. And I went all in on that. I was doing that every day, 8 hours a day at a ceramic studio. And I guess that just like reignited my passion for the craft of showing up for fine art over and over again. And also just doing something for the sake of it. It really didn't have an end result. I didn't need to sell them or anything like that. I just wanted to just work on a craft again. And there's something very beautiful working with clay, and take something that was taken from the ground and, develop this skill and this sensitivity to produce these shapes, if it be tableware or sculpture or whatever it may be. So that really like reignited a passion for me. And then I also got to do an indigo dyeing workshop. A friend invited me to come. And that also was a moment of like, just really reminded me of the alchemy, of paint and these materials. And it's so beautiful to see, the indigo comes from a leaf, so you're fermenting. It's this kind of cold water fermentation process. And then it turns into this beautiful blue once it's oxidized. And I think my head started getting excited again. My mind was starting to think like how I could integrate this into creating again. So then I started playing. There wasn't this moment of saying, oh, I want to be an artist, but just I was able to do it on the side. So I was, just experimenting, and meeting new people, building community within the art scene here. And only more recently have I come to a point where I have pulled together a variety of techniques, materials, a sense of like purpose with my work and meaning. And there always is like a interesting loop. I think a lot of people, a lot of artists feel like they need to find that story, find that meaning beforehand to be able to start. But it always happens in reverse. You have to produce the work and then you look back and be like, oh, I'm just producing what's already inside, you're just speaking to yourself. So what that may be for me is definitely a lot of my work is, provokes the sense of stillness, quietness, softness, delicacy. And I think that comes from what I loved about yoga, and how I live my life. My life, I kind of try and simplify it always as much as possible. You see that in my design, you see that in the way that I practice, the way that I live, and now within my paint as well. So the, kind of coming full circle, I predominantly work with natural materials, and the visuals that I create arguably are perceived as something that's quite natural. These shapes that are very organic and soft and gentle. You might see a landscape, you might see a tree, a wave, ocean, but they're always very soft, and something that we probably will naturally connect to. I think people see my work and will connect it to something in nature. I get like palm tree, whale fin, sunrise, landscape, whatever it may be. But there's no intention behind what it is. It's really just a opportunity to highlight the material. So with these materials are exponentially more sensitive with what you can do with them and how they interact in the canvas. So I'm always trying to find a way to highlight that beauty, you know? And in that way, we'll create certain shapes that work better with it. You know, so something that, say, is more watery, you're not going to get something that is very delicate in its line work. So maybe I have to highlight the beauty of that looseness that it creates. So, you know, I get to, you know, I'm creating these visuals that are perceived as, you know, very, very natural, and I'm using natural materials. And I think there's this resonance with the work that just gives you that same moment as when you see something in nature. So like a burning flame, or when you're looking out to the ocean, or where you see the wind blow through the trees, something very mesmerizing, you know. I think it really has that power to stop you, you know, and take a breath. And like, I'm in nature, I'm a living person, it's a beautiful life that we live, whatever it may be, or we're in this hectic world, and it's an opportunity to just kind of snap out of that. So I think I'm trying to do that with my work, you know. I'm trying to give people an opportunity to just stop for a moment and reflect, or to quieten down. Yeah. But that's where we are now. Yeah.
I mean, I look at your work, which is fantastic. It resonates so much with me because I think we have a shared outlook on how we maybe live our lives, but also how we want to make others feel, in terms of that respite that you might get by looking at one of your paintings. You know, respite from just everything in life that we all get carried away with. So I'm interested you talked about kind of a purpose and meaning, which I think gets banded around a lot and people don't quite understand. I love the way you talked about it. It's exactly the way I talk about it. You don't kind of choose it. You have to experiment and just be, and it almost finds you. How would you describe your meaning and your purpose with your process as much as the output? I think the output is clearly an expression of how you see the world and how you like to manipulate nature, but also how you want others to be and to feel when they see it, right? What about where does this all emanate from? And I'd argue it maybe doesn't emanate from yoga. It must go way back before that, right? Into childhood. Was this something that you loved being as a child or doing, or vice versa? You maybe didn't have that much stillness, peace, quiet. Do you have any idea where that might come from?
My dad, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a quiet man.
Your motorbike buddy.
My motorbike buddy. He is very content in his life. Very has a great sense of direction. You know, always very reliable. There's just like for me, just a great depiction of a father, or of a man, and always takes everything in his stride. You know, there's just such a great sense of strength. Doesn't really care so much about what other people think. Lives a very simple life, you know. So if I was going to argue, if I was going to go as far back as possible, I imagine that has a large influence. And then over time, it's probably just compounded through all the creative pursuits that I've done. I try and describe what I do, and this shows up in everything that I do. I have this obsession with finding something that is unique, but not forced. It's very easy to create something that is unique by having so many flourishes, so many unique accents, so many layers, whatever it may be. It's over the top. You can create something unique very easily that way. I love this, where it's like, it's so close to something that you know, but it's just slightly different that makes you go, that's nice. But it just seems so similar to everything else. And that's the sweet spot for me. So you'll see that through my design, through my paint. I hope it's something that from afar, from a quick moment, you might just be, I've seen that before, but if you give it a second, then there's this depth, this quality, this sensitivity that is very beautiful, you know?
Is it more your wish for the world that you put on canvas, or is it more of a reflection of you?
That's a good question. Through my teachings of being a teacher, I wanted to definitely help people. That's for sure. I wanted, I think like a lot of teachers, if it be a coach or a trainer, whatever it may be, most likely you had an experience in your life that helped you, and then you want to share that with the world. And that's definitely what happened with yoga. But I got to a point where I no longer wanted to be a teacher. I didn't want to shout. I didn't want to tell people what to do. And I think that's the beauty of art. It sits by itself and it's very quiet, and you're really inviting people to come and learn from it or to experience something from it, but they don't have to. And I think that's very beautiful. So I think it's really the same message. Again, in a class setting, I might be helping people find a sense of peace, quietness, move the body, find clarity, whatever it may be. And then I want that same thing with my work.
Do you wish the world was more like that, though?
I would like the world to be more like that.
Because what I find what resonates mostly with me in your work, I love the abstractness of it, but also kind of the literal ties in terms of the raw materials, right? I love your relationship with nature and how you express that, in something that's physical that we can hang on our walls, right?
Yeah.
Is the nature thing, where does that relationship come from? Is that something that you wish we as, without being too grandiose, we as a human race should pay more attention to? Is there kind of an undercurrent of that, or is it more of a kind of personal, intimate relationship?
I think it comes from a place of an obsession with process. And when you get to work with something, an obsession with process and an obsession with simplicity. Obviously, when you're using raw materials, it's not overly complicated, and I get to really feel like I own the entirety of the process from start to finish. So yeah, there's a great simplicity and joy when being able to just take something from the ground that anyone can access, and going through a variety of processes, if that's adding different liquids or a combination of different materials to allow it to adhere to the fabric, to stay around for a long time, to be light fast and color fast and so forth. There's such a magic in that alchemy, because there's nearly an ownership of the material even before you started creating the composition itself, rather than taking something that is created by someone else. I paint and then creating your piece with it. I get to take ownership over the material itself. I just get such great enjoyment from the search of the material. So recently I had an artist residency in Sumba with Cap Caroso, and they have a variety of natural dyeing materials out there, and beautiful Sumbanese artisans that I got to explore and work with.
Just to clarify, Sumba is an island in southeast Indonesia.
Yes,
right?
You got it.
Yeah, just for people who don't know. Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful, untouched island. Don't go there. No.
Yeah, it's still very, very raw, and there's this authenticity with the locals, and very under populated. It's very beautiful. So outside of what they use for dyeing, they actually have this thing called betel nut, which they use as a drug. It's a mild high, kind of gives you a light nicotine high, I would say, but it produces this bright red
teeth
color. Teeth. What's interesting about that, the actual high comes from only one component. It's formed of 3 components. The other 2 components are there to produce a red color. And then, so you can actually get the high without having the red.
Okay.
It's not essential. So there's a few things happening. One, they believe there's like this variety to it, like a beauty. So that smile, the lips, the teeth, there's a beauty to that. So that's one thing they see. And also there's this idea of giving back to the earth. So they're then spitting it into the ground. So there's this cyclical thing. So we're taking the nut and the other things, combining them together, and then this kind of blood, representation of blood back into the ground, this energy. Because their religion is massively kind of intertwined into, this cyclical
The
give and take.
religion.
Exactly. Yeah. Which I always, when I was there, just felt very Avatar to me, this like strong connection to nature, which was very beautiful. So that was enticing for me. I was like, with this bright red, I want to see if I can create something with this. It's not something that they use. Not that I asked some people, it's just one of the answers I got is too expensive.
Really?
The material, it's not really that expensive, but maybe they mean in the sense that they value it more as you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know how they wanted me to interpret that. But I got to start working with that. I mixed it with a variety of other things. One of the main components is tree sap that kind of gives it the thickness that's necessary to paint with. So my whole new series was with that. And that was what was so beautiful, that I get to work with stuff that is kind of rooted to different places. I get so excited for it, kind of inspires my travels, trying to uncover new color or even lost color, color that might have been used in the past, but, disappeared with mass manufacturing. It's too difficult or too expensive. So that definitely is like an underpinning of my mission, which gives me this motivation and this inspiration for new series. Yeah.
So we'll talk about your process in a minute. I'm fascinated to hear about the whole process, because I know it's not just getting canvas out and painting. But when did you kind of start noticing your interest in these natural colors? You mentioned it a little bit earlier, but more so the emotional weight of these colors and how they might be appropriate for certain expressions or depictions of what you want to put on canvas. Was that kind of like a conscious thing? Oh, I want to try this color or this natural ingredient because of such and such? Or is it just more of an experimentation?
I think the material comes first.
Okay.
Yeah. So the original was indigo. Like I said,
Yep.
I got to work with that, and to see, I would argue that indigo is probably the most powerful natural dye on the planet. The way that it adheres and sticks without needing any support of anything else. It's very color fast, light fast, and you get such a range of color in the sense of light to dark. You can intensify that color to nearly black if you spend enough time with it. And so,
sorry, what do you mean by light fast and color fast?
In the way, so light fast would be, let's say the sun hits it and it gets bleached. It's getting it, so it's being protected against from light.
Okay.
And then color fast is that it doesn't shift in its color.
In its hue.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It stays the same hue. So that was like a spark, that like reignited, because I am an artist. We're all artists, arguably, but I think there's a mindset and this training that you go through as an art student that really just allows you to accept this idea that anything is good or bad. Nothing is right or wrong. It's entirely up to you, and that's what's so difficult. And I struggled when I was younger to have the confidence to say, no, this is it. This is me. I'm proud of this. I'm excited by this. This is my message, whatever it may be. And you've got to put it out there. There's no one telling you that it's correct. And I always have this memory of one of my university teachers, as a young boy looking for answers and like reassurance. I would go up to him, and like a lot of people, I assume, I'd be like, is this good? Am I on the right track?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I keep going this way, am I going to get a good grade? And then he'd be like, do you think it's good? I'm like, I want to know if you think it's good, because you're the one grading me. And he was like, well, if you think it's good, then it is. And that at that time was just so hard for me to wrap my head around, and now it just seems so obvious.
Yeah, it's so interesting you talk about that, because I've been talking about this a lot recently, and how, as kids, young kids were creatively. We go and play, we go and improvise, we go and make stuff. It's just like, just the whole world is a playground, right? As we get older and as we go through the formal education process, as our parents limit our, I say restrict our kind of movements in terms of rules, you can't do this, you can't say that, you can't do this. Generally speaking, our creativity it's still there, but it just gets beaten down a bit. And so we start like trying to perform and validate and get grades. And is this good? it's good or bad, right? It's as though like now as you grow older, you realize that system is just almost arbitrary. It's almost artificial in its construction, right? People made this system out of nothing, and it means nothing, especially in the art world. If only we could all understand that we're all creative. It's just a matter of making sure that creativity is aligned with who we are, right? So when you talk about that, it resonates so much. And that quote, "Don't try and be the best, be the only." And that's like just sums up everything in terms of creativity and being an artist. It's like, but as children, certainly as younger adults, I don't understand. It has to be, it's 0 or 1, right? It's box or no box. Like it has to be good but I have to be on this path because I know that there's this, or I think that there's this end result where I could just go, okay, yeah, I'm an artist now, right? Just, of course, that's not reality. Agree?
No, I agree. Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult road, and I feel very lucky to have had these other, crafts, jobs to allow me to make my way back to where I am now. I think I would have ended up here no matter what, if we all just have a different journey. But yeah, no, I feel very lucky I feel like in some ways I was kind of forced in that direction, in the sense, like I said, I was really not that capable in school in any other subject. So I had to kind of navigate myself down that road just to find it was the only thing that kind of gave me a sense of being good, So that was
achieving something.
Yeah, I was like, oh, they're telling me I'm good at it, so I should maybe keep going.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I'm very excited to just continue that,
So how do you validate success now? Or does that not come into your vocabulary at all?
No, definitely. I mean, success is, we have this kind of like westernized societal structure of success, which I think we don't have to, but I mean, we nearly have to be a part of, like as an artist, yes, we can argue that we are creating something beautiful or successful or whatever it may be, something that you enjoy. It doesn't have to be anything more than that. But if you're not able to take it from there and then get it into the public eye, then, that would be a challenge for me. I feel like it's very human to want to be justified for your work. And yeah, I can't say that it doesn't feel good when someone purchases a piece of work, or I get an opportunity to share it in some manner, if it would be a residency or an exhibition, or because it's just a justification. There's this sense of this natural curve of a career in any career. So no, it's nice that people resonate with it as well, right? So it's like, oh wow, so I'm not the only one that thinks this, or maybe I'm helping or supporting or bringing just some beauty into a space or whatever it may be. So no, I'm someone, I like the kind of 360 approach or like points of building a business. I've built multiple, and I'm not an artist that just likes to create the art. So I'm excited by sales, outreach, marketing, branding, storytelling, web building, photography, press, PR. I like them all. And I like it as a package, because it's such an interesting journey as an artist. I think the most eye-opening thing, once I've really committed to this career path, is the kind of underpinnings of the infrastructure of becoming a famous artist. The way that you need to build up a CV of credentials, of prizes, awards, press, magazines, and all that. And predominantly they're paid. There's this kind of continuous exchange. You might have to pay them, or you might have to exchange work or effort or application process. There's all these things that that world is very propped. Everyone needs to be paid. Whatever magazine, they need to be paid somehow. So as much as a lot of that, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors and like fakery to get you to be seen. I'm willing to do it / there is an enjoyment with it because there's this like sense of this growth and accomplishment, but then it allows me to be in a place that people see my work, in a broader sense. And we all know the like validation of like something being framed in the sense of the physical frame itself, the framing of the space, the building, and then the town, the city, the country. If it's in Vogue magazine, it's the same work, but the framing of where it's placed drastically increases its value and the perception of that value. And I'm willing to play that game. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll dive into the business side of things now, because I think that's such an interesting part that a lot of people like to know about, and there's very individual in the journey. But I think it's important to try, like you said, try and enjoy that process. It's part of the art. It's you just can't just make a painting and that's the only thing you do. Obviously, you can do that, but if you've chosen it as a path to sustain your life or to grow in terms of the stature associated with that, then you've got to put in all of the other moving parts that have to come together to make sure that happens. So tell us a little bit about essentially your business model as an artist. Give the audience and myself an idea of what this, we have the painting as the kind of the final output, right? What goes into that, not only as a process, but certainly with the marketing and the business structure. How do you make money from it?
Big question. I'm going to see how I can like distill that down. So, regarding where I am in my journey, arguably, I really told myself the start of this year that I was going to be a full-time artist. So you're speaking to someone that is very early on their journey of being, like a working artist. I've been someone that's been in the art world for a very long time, but someone that's committed fully kind of to all aspects is very new. So I can kind of give you an insight to a few things that I've done initially and some places that I've found success. So what I realized is I needed to develop some sort of CV to give yourself basically a sense of like you need to build up your clout, your
presence.
your value. So one of the things I started applying for was residencies.
Mm-hmm.
The first one was in Cap Corozo. I have one coming up in Mexico. And then I have one in Shanghai, which I'm very excited by. It's actually the Swatch Art Peace Hotel,
cool, which
is quite a prestigious residency. And it's a 4-month residency with 18 other artists. So it's very much been created to help support and grow a small community of artists. So there's 18 living accommodation, 18 studios, and then a gallery. And then we're there for 4 months, supporting each other and producing this work with an end result of, exhibiting our work there. So every time you get to access these different touch points, there's a whole variety of opportunities through connection. You go into different countries, meeting new people, producing new work. So at the foundational level, that's what I've found to be like the best like stepping stone into trying to develop my craft, at the same time expand my reach.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, working on press. So we're here right now on a podcast. So just helping me develop and communicate my story.
Mm-hmm.
Magazine outreach as well. Just starting very small. Again, I already told you, if you want to be in large magazines, you either have to be famous or you have to pay them to be in there. But smaller magazines, then they might be willing to tell your story. So the story that I'm telling in the upcoming magazine is the story of Simba, going over there, working with the tribes or the artisans, producing the natural dyes from there and extracting that and working with that material and producing something from that and being inspired by the land, using the land, and then kind of the reasoning behind showing the work and bringing that stillness into people's lives. So that's kind of the story there.
So just stop there for a second. So residency wise, PR wise, it may seem obvious to you, but tell us how you go about applying for those or trying to get featured in those publications?
Again, very, very new to me, and it's all been very eye-opening and again, quite enjoyable in some way. Actually, I'll give you a little insight and probably resonate with people. I is someone who really struggled at school, struggled with language, reading, writing. Which is held me back, such a crutch, it was so difficult for me to move beyond that language. And that's why I continuously moved into visuals. That's why I felt comfortable. And applying for these things is challenging. They're quite extensive. Like, you might have to do 1,000 words on this, then a 400-word bio, then a 500-word intent, like what you want to do whilst you're there.
Right.
So like it stacks up, and it's just not something that would have been possible for me, or I at least would have avoided it. It wouldn't have been worth my time. Just so much distress. I just really struggled with that, But now we have ChatGPT, and that's, I know it can be deemed as something that feels unhuman. But it's for me, it's finally allowed me to communicate what I've always wanted to say.
Yeah.
And when I read it back, I try and be as honest with it as possible and offer it what I really feel. I know that it's going to be able to feed back to me in more of a formulaic way. So I get to just kind of say what I want. I normally do audio, I speak to it. And it feels so true to me. So I feel it really changed my life, actually. And that might have been a component of me deciding, I think there were so many things happening, but that was a real big game changer for me. So you have to apply. So there's a variety of ways. Social media is a good way, like Instagram. There's so many like open call meaning like anyone can apply generally. Mm-hmm. It could be anything from applying from an exhibition. It could be applying for a prize. It could be applying for a magazine. It could be applying for a residency. And I've applied for quite a few, just to kind of give you an idea of numbers. I've maybe applied for 30, 40, and I've got 3.
Yeah, 10%.
So 10%, not bad.
Pretty good.
I don't know. I
would say 1 in 100 to people.
I don't know what other people, maybe other people can write in and tell me what their percentage rating is.
Better than 1%. I think it's good. But you've got to have the work, obviously. You've got to have the brand.
That's a good
look
question.
at your website and it's the designer Jake that comes through. It's well put together. I know who you are immediately on that front page. Your work obviously speaks for itself. You've still got to have that.
Yeah.
That really will give you a foothold in that application process, surely.
I would assume so. Yeah. So the website is very new. Like I said, I'm quite lucky as being a brand designer, web designer. I was able to produce that all myself. And that was a challenging process. I've built a few websites myself for an agency, but as most creatives know, building your own site or building your own thing is always the most challenging. But that was very rewarding, actually. I remember when I was younger, you produce all this work and there was never this sense of satisfaction at the end because you never really completed it. And then more recently, you would complete the work and most likely frame it, so there's this kind of completion there. But then there's this next completion of you photograph it and then you present it on your website, or on your portfolio, which then is this like extra layer of creativity. So the photography, styling, the design of the site or the design of the PDF, and then also like how you want to shoot it. Of course, you're going to have like the standard like product shot as you would with like, say, a t-shirt. But then you could move into some sort of campaign orientated photography. So maybe that's interacting with the painting. Maybe it's on a wall. Maybe it's in a beautiful space. Maybe you're using AI, is to place it in a again, another frame to highlight its meaning or its feeling, whatever it may be. So yes, so a combination of having presenting yourself in a good way, and then luckily using chat to help me communicate that in as an authentic way as possible.
It's just a matter of finding the people, the publications, or the establishments that you want to apply to, right?
Yeah, I think some speak to you more than others. Mm-hmm. Anytime something of nature is mentioned, I get like excited because I feel like I have a better potential of getting it because mine's so heavily intertwined in nature in so many ways, what I'm using and what I'm depicting. And very much like who I am, how I live, and so forth. And yeah, location or the reputability of the magazine or the brand, does that like connect? You need to be important, but like be selective with these things, I think.
So we've got
yeah,
PR, which
yeah.
is a big part of it. We've got residencies. What else is forming the business model pillars?
The next one is, well, this is in no order. I think you can go in any order. Exhibitions is a very standard way to highlight your work, to present your work. Now, you could work with a gallery directly, so you have to be like, what's the word that I'm looking for? They sign you. I can't remember the word I'm looking for right now, but the gallery signs you, and then your work is placed within that gallery, and you're a part of that gallery. Or you find your own space, and you produce your own exhibitions, which potentially might be necessary. One, to sell work, maybe, but two, just to produce content. Because it's just a demonstration of. There's one thing showing like, oh, here's my work. Here's this is what it looks like, but how's it look in a space? Not only like in the way that it's curated, how they're placed side by side, how they're lit, how you're creating like, your range or your set of paintings. So that's something that you need to look into. And then, if you want a gallery, so far I've had brief interactions. Unfortunately, none have gone through. Again, they weren't the right fit. But outreach. Yeah, I do quite a lot of outreach, and just, I have my PDF, I have my website, I have, I send them an email, very specific to who they are. Again, I'm very selective. I only want to be a part of something that I feel like my work fits into, and I kind of appreciate their vision. I think there's a lot of benefits of being, like signed to a gallery. One of the main things is to get into art fairs.
Okay.
So you can get to art fairs individually. It was really cool. I've recently got reached out to multiple large art fairs in the last couple of months, which again, when we spoke about success, when you get reached out to, it's like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
One, you just
feel something.
Yeah, you're like, oh, one, they've just seen me. That's kind of cool. They found me somehow. Two, I must have sung enough for them to reach out to me. But then that kind of died down quite quickly. And then I realized, obviously, they want money from you.
Yeah.
But still, it's one step forward, because if they don't reach out to you, you do have to apply. So there's an application process, and then they accept you, then you pay. And so you skip the application process, and then you go straight to payment. And then you pay for wall space. So 1 meter, 2 meters, 3 meters, depend on the art fair. I've seen anything from 200 to 2,000, give or take.
Wow.
But it can go exponentially more if you want more space, right? But initial fee. But then the footfall can be hundreds of thousands. We're talking very large numbers. It's not something that I've delved into yet. I think it's something that I will line up and move forwards with. But if you have a gallery, they're doing that for you. That's kind of part of them taking most likely 50%. The gallery's taking 50% every time they sell, but they're trusting in you, right? Like your whole brand that you've built, your work, your story, everything. And that will then most likely give you access to a lot of fairs, and galleries get like easy access or like initial access. Whereas individual designers painters is limited. Yeah. So I would say that's probably nearly the kind of complete.
And selling artwork directly to individuals?
Yeah, that's the thing. So most of my work has been sold directly.
Yeah.
Through Instagram. And then also through placing the work in places with footfall. Restaurants, hotels, retreat spaces. Have I done anything else? I think we've done them 3. And I've done different things. I've done placing it and then with like, the name and QR so they can purchase it. I've done it like a rental. So people have actually rented the pieces for me.
Oh, okay.
And I've also done it in a restaurant where it's kind of like a gallery. You know what I mean? Like it's I would say that's a great way as a beginner artist to introduce, because it's kind of a win-win. You get to go through the process similar to having a real gallery, and the struggles and, the skills that you have to develop. And then obviously the restaurant gets some beautiful artwork for a short period of time. And who knows, it doesn't even really matter what restaurant, but maybe arguably a more premium restaurant might yield a better result.
And when you sell your prints directly to an individual,
Yeah.
are you selling the whole canvas with frame, or does it get rolled up? Or
Depends.
Okay.
So let's say someone's purchased it here in Bali, and actually pretty much all my purchases have been through restaurants. People have come in and they've scanned the QR and they've messaged me saying, I love the piece. Can I purchase it? Most of the time they're here. So then they're buying it framed. They just go and they're putting it onto their wall. But also some people do want to take it home. So then it goes rolled. But I've also shipped it framed. So it really depends. But from here, it's expensive to ship framed.
Yeah.
Very expensive. So yeah, I guess all options are available. Something like when I was producing my work, I think at least subtly at the back of my mind, I did want my work to be rolled because I do live on a small island. So the likelihood of having to ship it is high. So my work through these layered washes and stains and dyes, because there's not thick paint, there's no potential of cracking. It rolls very easily. There's no problems whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
But people that are using thick paint potentially actually can't roll them. It's not an option for them. So that was something that was partially selective, but kind of naturally happened anyway because of the material. It kind of was like a win-win.
So tell us more about, and we're going to rewind now, but tell us more about the process. Okay, so you obviously work with a lot of natural ingredients. Tell us how the natural ingredients gets onto canvas and everything in between.
Okay, let me see. So a whole variety of natural components. Normally they have to be mixed. So the main thing that I use right now is a tree sap. And so that's what gives it the thickness. The tree sap is basically a mixture of the extracted powder, then with water, and then I use some vegetable glycerine. That again gives it like that velocity. I think that's the right word.
Viscosity.
Viscosity, yeah, nice. And a bit of clove oil, which isn't necessary. It just extends the life of it whilst it's wet. But whilst it's dry, when it's dry, then it doesn't matter. It's actually the problem with mold growth is only when it's wet. So once it's put onto the canvas and then dried, there's going to be none of them all them problems of.
So how long does it take to dry?
I mean, it's very wet. There are puddles of water a lot of the time, but maybe anywhere between 2 hours and 12 hours, depending on like how much puddling of the. Yeah, nothing. But with the clove oil, it's lasting weeks, so I can produce this work. So I'm binding these pigments together. It might be, clay, oxides, which are basically extracted pigments from the ground. You can get them in a variety of colors, actually, which is super cool. And then we have stuff like indigo, and then we have more dyes, which the dyes that are more, they're extracted in a boiling process, mostly, apart from indigo, which is a cold water fermentation process. So, for example, mango leaf or coconut husk or mahogany bark, you're basically adding it to water and boiling it for an extended period of time, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. Then you're soaking the fabric in, or I'm pouring it on top of the fabric. So actually, sometimes I'm literally pouring boiling hot dye on top of my canvas, and then it's just kind of steaming and soaking and doing its thing.
Alchemy. Yeah,
there's a real alchemy with it, and something I enjoy, and also like it's a challenge and it's difficult for me, is the work changes as it dries. So there can be this whole journey of emotion where, let's say I pour some dye and it mixes and merges, and I'm like, that's fun. I film it because it's like super cool how it's all merging together, and then it dries and it's like a brown lump. I'm like, and most of the time I'll come down in the morning because it's like these big puddles take like 12 hours or so. And I'm so excited. I feel like really like confident and like, oh yeah, that was a good day. When you get like that, that's a good day moment. And I wake up in the morning, I'm like,
It's analogous to when I think I've got a photo nailed.
Yeah.
And then come the next day, get it on the computer and just go.
Because you just seen it on a small screen?
Yeah, you just seen it, or it's the experience, right? With people, and you got, the lights, and it's like, oh, it's great, yeah, nailed it. And you just get it on your laptop screen and just go, oh, no, it's just average. Yeah.
But that's really cool because same for me, I guess. You could argue that that moment that we gained
For
of
sure.
like, oh my, that was beautiful because of the emotion,
Yeah.
because of the people, whatever was
Much more
happening.
valuable.
That right there is like, wow, that's really cool. But unfortunately, yeah, sometimes you end up with this lump. So that's a constant fight for me. And, you know, kind of going back to this like nothing's good or bad or right or wrong, you know, let's say you're producing something for someone else, i.e. design, the end result is complete by it kind of completing the task, like maybe it attracts a certain audience or the client wanted a certain look and you completed that look. Jake, you did it, tick, cool. But when you're painting, there's no completion. That's up to you to decide. So you can spiral, like you pour like a splodge or whatever. And you're like, oh, that's not the splodge I wanted. That's not the splash. I wanted the splash to be like this. And you can get obsessed. But there's something so beautiful about that, you know? And for me, there's this constant back and forth, this push-pull fight. That there's this real struggle, but I just keep coming back because I love that moment, that high moment, you know? And there's such beauty in that. So yeah, layers pouring on over the top of each other, and I can do many layers. It could be 10, it could be 20, it could be more.
Wow.
Like I know when it's done. That's something that I just know. Like I'm like, I did it.
So where would you say your vision, because you obviously have a vision, you don't start painting without a vision, or do you start painting without a vision of how you want it to look?
Depends. So when I start like a new series, it's not even actually to do with new series, it just depends. So sometimes I might come in and say, I want the pigment, the paint, whatever, to guide me. And I'll actually use the way that it moves. Obviously, I'm managing it to a certain extent, and that's something that I really love. It's like, I want this act of like, oh, it just happened moment. Like when someone sees it, I want this, like, there's a certain part of this, like, was that supposed to happen? And then combined with like, there's this like real sense of precision. And there's this push-pull there, this balance there that I'm obsessed with. That's what actually keeps me kind of coming back and forth. And that's when I know I've got that perfect balance of like these moments in the piece that's like, you know, whatever, it's like merged and bleached or blended or like puddled in a way that's impossible to do by hand. It has to happen. Then it's mixed with stuff that is more finely kind of curated and layered. So my work is like a mix of the two. So there's moments on there that it's mostly out of my hand. You know, I can navigate it a little bit, but I'm really entrusting in the material itself and the way that it moves. And then most of the time, the layers on top start to become a little bit more precise, and I'm definitely way more in control of them. So as a complete composition, I'm continuously trying to find that balance of like, oh, it just happened. It's kind of like the natural, like it just naturally happened. And then it's been curated, you know, kind of like, and there's different forms and like definitions, but reminds me of like idealism. So for me, idealism in my world, in the world that I'm creating, is I'm using nature, but I'm able to move it around. So nature is beautiful, but what if I could just move that tree there and then the river cuts through the middle? Oh, now that the composition is really nice. So it's kind of like that. So I'm using something that is natural, that is already beautiful, but I just want to slightly adjust it to highlight it. Again, that's something you can very much do with photography, right? That's kind of the game. So yeah, I like the idea of taking something that is natural, that is already there, but just moving it around. You know, you're kind of like a curator. So yeah, coming back to it. So layers, washes, and for me, predominantly, if you see my work, I'm mostly sticking to a monotone color palette. So I'll have a blue series, then a red series, and then I'm currently working on my Simba series, which is predominantly in red tones, taking its inspiration from the betel nut. And that for me, that choice, again, it's just you could make natural product not look natural, you know? It could like be very vibrant and like you wouldn't know, but there's a part of me that wants people to be reminded that it is natural. So by using these kind of muted monotone color palettes, it's just a reminder that that's what it is. So that's very important to me.
And how do you finish the whole thing? I think we talked a little bit off air I imagine if someone buys your work and you're using natural ingredients, if you're an ignorant person like myself, you would worry a little bit. Okay, is this going to fade or is this going to last? But you counter that.
Yeah, I went through a long process and a lot of testing. Again, it does depend on the dye. Coming back to indigo, that actually would last.
Bulletproof.
Bulletproof might be pushing it, but it's definitely the strongest dye out there. And if it's not in direct sunlight, you're going to be just fine. But what I do, so I work on stretch canvas predominantly. What I'll do is unstretch the canvas, and then I'll soak it in a kind of a mixture of natural components that creates like a sealed varnish, one of them being a beeswax. So it's fully submerged and then taken out, and it's dripping, and just soaking through, and you get this thin wash. Basically, it locks in the back and the front. Originally, I was just doing the front, but then the sides weren't done, the back weren't done, which I had no problems, but I just wanted to really create like something that would last the test of time. And as you said, when you're using natural product, I think some people will naturally think that it's not going to be something that can last as long. So I wanted to combat that. And I've had great success so far. I've got one piece up that's in like direct sunlight for about 3 years, and it hasn't shifted in any manner. But we can meet up in another 10 years and I'll let you.
I need a piece first. Give me a piece.
Yeah. I'll let you know.
You talked a little bit about this. It sounds, as you were talking, you could see your eyes lighting up. This flow state that you get when you do the painting. There's a lot of, outside of that, there's a lot of struggle, right? There's a lot of strategy. We talked about business strategy. We talked about just general, striving to be recognized, to be better, to make some money from it, etc. Almost like the starving artist journey, right?
Yeah.
Is that a myth for you? Have you found that you've kind of fit into that cliche, or how do you see that starving artist myth, if so, or starving artist label being part of your struggle? And if so, is that something that you're kind of reveling in?
I think there's something very romantic about it. I have friends that I think depict that identity, and I
almost enjoy it.
Maybe they revel in that identity. They really they want that to be part of their journey. And I see these type of people, and I do when I can talk to other people, I kind of call them real artists. I do see them because that's how we in the media, that's kind of how we see these people. And I think there's some beauty in it, and there's just such a great dedication to the craft. But it's not been my journey, and it's definitely not essential, that's for sure. But I really admire that. And I think it's the same admiration of people that are able to do it at such an early age. Like I said, I wasn't able to. I had to go and build some other things to get me to where I was. I think that's the same person. They're so committed to that craft. And they give up, there's great sacrifice. I feel like sometimes that sacrifice might be happening just to be a part of that brand. Yeah, I think that is possible. But yeah, not my journey. Luckily, I've got a variety of other things that help support me financially, but I really believe they've supported me emotionally, or as a complete person to get me to where I am now to produce the work that I'm producing. So I feel really proud. Proud is actually a really good word. I feel very proud to have got to where I am, and I'm very excited to see where I can take it with the kind of the more 360 understanding of what it takes to build a business, not just to build art, I mean, that's a big shift for me. And I keep the more I delve into this rabbit hole of the world of art, it's very eye-opening.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it really is. Well, we wish you all the best. What does the market look like? I should say niche or sector of the market in terms of painting, and then sub-niche into your style or genre, however you would essentially label your style. What does that look like? Is there a lot of competition? Is there a lot of game playing? Is there a lot of strategy? I mean, there is in terms of business, but in terms of that art sector that you're in, tell me more about other players in the market. Is it just constant, just battle all the time, or do we not know so much about it? We're still learning about it, I guess.
I'm definitely learning. Obviously, predominantly where I'm seeing that is through social media, which can, one, be daunting, but also inspiring. I think there's this, the way that I see it from what I see so far, there's these like two categories. There's this world of like, social media online artists that you're able to produce, a very successful, income and be supported by your following or following adjacent, as that kind of scales out. And it seems like maybe there's like a certain cap on what you could charge. Maybe let's just say 10 grand for a painting, if I was going to just put a random number on it. And then that would be the maximum that I think people would pay for a piece of artwork purely for its aesthetic. It's like they love the person, they love the piece, and they have some income to them, have this beautiful thing in their home. And then beyond that, it seems like then you're probably paying for some sort of investing component. So then they're buying into you beyond just your skill. It's like again, you're coming down to that like hype around your name. You're kind of building your brand. So if that be press or storytelling or a certain gallery or sold to a certain person. And then really the scale of cost is infinite, which is, again, I think when I was younger seemed so out of reach and so like baffling. Like it just could, for me, and maybe people will relate to this, is the more it costs, the better it has to be. Surely that's how they must be a better painter. There must be a better technique. It must be harder. It must take longer. There's these like, because time is money, all these kind of like traditional, what would I call it? Like constructs. But obviously quickly realizing that's not the case. There's a whole variety of other things that are happening. In the past, I would say a lot of the time it's an artist that's kind of, shaken the culture. There's been something that's been very iconic and a statement. And that's what's so cool about art. It's like it's a rebellion, to the norm, maybe to pop culture or to society or
like a Banksy or someone like that.
Yeah, he's arguably like a very modern version of that. So yeah, then you're in this whole different category of producing. You're scaling the value of your work outside of like just investing for a home, but they're investing as like a long term potential. Like a increase of value with your work. That's a whole nother world that I haven't delved into, but I'd be excited to. Yeah, I'm really
find
excited.
A rich man who can commission you for 10 pieces.
That seems to be a regular story. Yeah, you find that the right person that believes in you, and you might, arguably what's happening is if he can then pass off your pieces to other people, his pieces are going to scale in value, right? So we saw it with like NFTs, that it's very much a similar game. It's just not as physical, and it can be scaled exponentially more because of the tangibility, it's so easy, but it's a similar game. Yeah, it's the same thing. So I think that would be an interesting thing to have to navigate in the future when I get there, because I imagine there's a whole abundance of challenges that you'll have to confront, with like authenticity and so forth. I can imagine that being difficult.
Yeah, I don't know how that even works these days with paintings. You gotta have some kind of unique, I don't know how they'd tell a real one from a fake one. If you became famous one day, then you're still producing the same artwork, and then I'm so ignorant to that part of the art market. But
there's multiple documentaries on Netflix of duplication of works from very famous people. Made a lot of money. But yeah, authentication is something that can be challenging, but there's a lot of people out there trying to combat that and doing the best job that they can, predominantly through, if they really go into detail, I think they're scanning, and understanding the pigment, the material, the layering, the canvas, the date of the canvas. So they can really pull apart a lot of the uniqueness of
DNA.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like I would imagine, as much as I do believe someone could quite easily copy my work, like, but I just don't think it would have, uh, I think there is like a richness, one, through just myself pouring into it. I think that's a component. Two, the material, and the process, you know. But if someone didn't know any of that and just try to duplicate it visually, I think from, at least from afar, it would be close. You know what I mean? But let's say they had to go through like some sort of DNA extraction, it would be then very obvious that it would be very different. So much stuff in mine.
Yeah.
It's like a,
Yeah.
it's like a dinner. It's like a mixing pot. Yeah, yeah. Like when you like, I like to add like ingredients, but my materials to my art, you know, when it's shown, most of the time you'll see like acrylic and oil on canvas. Mine's like a list. And some people just write mixed media, but for me, the material is such a highlight of the work, you know. It's such a core component of what I'm doing. So I like to mention
really is the unique part of your work. And hopefully I will own a piece one day. But it's been such a pleasure talking to, well, the real and authentic Jake Paul White. When I think I first saw your profile, I just saw Jake Paul. I think for some reason, Jake Paul. It's like the Jake Paul, as in Jake.
He's transitioned.
Anyway,
the
pleasure to
boxing
meet
didn't
you.
work for him.
Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Of course, thank you.
Take care.
Yeah.
So how do you validate success now, or does that not come into your vocabulary? Does that not come into your vocabulary? Why can't I say the word? Vocabulary. Does that not come into your vocabulary at all?